We have a special treat tonight. We have Sophia from Cherry Avenue is going to lead us in the pledge. Go ahead, Sophia. Allegiance to the flag of the United States. And the special treat continues when we have the select chorus from Cherry Avenue.
Thank you for having me.
Next on our agenda tonight, and it just keeps on coming. We have student recognition, and I think it's not the store.
Hey, good evening, everybody. Dr. Sora, regretfully, he can't make it today, we're under the weather, but I'm Brian Decker, the assistant principal. Just standing in this place. Thank you, everybody, for letting us come tonight to recognize the kids in our school. This year, we asked all of our students and the entire Sayville Middle School community to raise the bar. This group of students did exactly that at our annual Future Cities competition. These students were asked to design a city that addresses climate change and energy efficiency, a true real-world problem. The team designed carbon-free production methods that include hydroelectric ocean caissons, hydrogen-fueled power plant, and regenerative tires. Sayville was also recognized as a third place overall for our region, an awesome accomplishment that highlighted their teamwork, creativity, organization, and their knowledge of all varied systems that come together to make a successful city. We are so proud of you and your hard work and for representing all of us in such a distinguished way. We are also very proud of Ms. Lascalzo and Mr. Goodman for helping guide these remarkable group of students in such great success. So congratulations to all. And I call your name, when I call your name out, everybody just come on up here, get your citation, and if you could just stand here, we'll take a photo with everybody. Madeline Anderson. Christina Artuga. Hannah Batterberry. Paula Getzel. Carol Drake. Ego Collins. Kieran Cummings. Matthew DeGraff. Caroline Cooks. Andrea Hopkinson. Ryan Linker. Jill Martin. William Mitchell. Shelby Murchison. Brady O'Donoghue, sorry, Brady O'Donoghue. Jake O'Malley. Gia Pisani. Troy Radzishwitz. Mia Shelley. Vigna Agatoro. Sophia Dario. And Olivia Verdone.
Okay, we're gonna do some problem solving activity right now, and you guys are problem solvers, so we're gonna try and get you all in front of that screen with the taller people in the front. And the less tall people, sorry, taller people in the back, the less taller people in the front, kind of push into the back of their building. So all you guys over here can slide over.
My God, come on.
Come on down, guys.
I'm down.
Good, good, good. People in the back, we're just gonna kind of turn in sideways, so there's more room, and then you can scrunch. Turn it up.
Okay, Ruby. Yeah.
Back row, turn into each other so you can make.
That is much better.
Right. All right, look. Beautiful. All right, families who want to get a shot, go ahead. Congratulations, everybody. Good job.
Now, I always say that after every time we give citations, if all you guys have homework to do. Have a good night. You want to stay? Stay.
I think that was it. It was a lot. It was a big city.
Thank you, everyone.
I know a lot of those kids. Smart kids, big city. Yeah.
How many volleyball players?
I thought there was no volleyball players. Had so much players in each one. Yeah, no volleyball. No, I did.
We have the student report, and my report.
Next item on our agenda tonight is correspondence. I don't see any. We don't have any. Next item is superintendents of schools. Dr. Ferris.
Well, I want to thank everyone for coming tonight. We have a full agenda. We're going to have a student report from the high school. We're also going to do an around the district to share some of the wonderful things going on. And then Dr. Gurgis and I are going to do our budget presentation number 2, which focuses on the staffing aspect and equipment aspect of our school budget and for your review prior to hopefully adopting the budget on March 9th. Great. Okay, so first up, our student from the high school.
Hi, everyone. My name is Sophia Birch. Unfortunately, student 1 couldn't be with me tonight. She's feeling under the weather. So I'll be representing her as well. She's the president of the SWEEP. It's an environment for the high school. Students working for enhanced environmental protection. And what they're doing this year, it's going well. They did like their 10th period today. We did a planting with like pots, and we're going to be planting the greenhouse for spring. And she would like to see more lunch options. So she's vegetarian, as am I, and we'd like to see more vegetarian vegan options. And I'm the president of Fashion Club, and we're doing very well this year. We went on a field trip. And it's in correspondence to the art clubs and the art program, and we're hoping to extend that influence in Sayville schools and high school as well. And I'm in History Club Global Affairs, and something I'm proud of this month that we're doing for Black History Month, we're holding teach-ins next Tuesday, Wednesday, Thursday during some periods. So it's recently going to be covering Black influences of music, of art, culture, movements. And Stu and I were talking, and we have a few other topics that we like to propose. So one of them is more native speakers in the foreign language department. We'd like to see more like Spanish and French speakers, maybe the addition of more languages. Serena's dad is from Italy. Her Nono only speaks Italian. So she wants to communicate with them. But I like what we're doing. We have a multicultural festival this March 6th. So I like that we're appreciating cultures of their own. And Serena brought up that, and I brought up that since COVID, there hasn't been as much of a connection between students and teachers. It's getting easier because now that we're getting back to normal, so are the relations between teachers and students. Something else COVID has also caused is the destigmatization of mental health in schools. So I really like what Sayville is doing in proposing like mental health programs for students during some of our gym periods. Like I believe it's one per month. We go down to the basement and we basically just talk to, there's a teacher that helps us. It's called room L30. We basically just talk to her about mental health. So I really appreciate the school doing that. And now that there's a need for it, I mean, anxiety levels have risen because of COVID. So I think that being in place is really helping us out. So thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Just cover a couple items around the district. In the PowerPoint, you see a picture of our board members and Dr. Gerges. Dr. Gerges was a featured presenter last night at the Suffolk County School Board Association's I guess dinner and presentation on tell your story and the story of finance and how school boards need to be well aware of finances and the financial state of districts in terms of auditing and just properly being accountable for the funds they spend in the taxpayers. So Dr. Gerges did a wonderful job presenting to a crowd of about 50 people from school boards all over Suffolk County.
And that's what,
We had 4 board members there. Sorry, John, I cut you out of the picture when I adjusted it for the PowerPoint.
that's all right.
Prominently featured.
You could draw me.
But it was a really nice event. I just want to congratulate Dr. Gerges on a very well done presentation.
It was more exciting than the school play. Drama.
I mean,
I don't know if I would say that.
tried.
It was pretty good.
What's most interesting about it is that it's just how much knowledge of fiscal training the board member now has to know, because as when the state orders start coming down, instead of just interviewing the board president or vice president, they're going to start interviewing individual board members about their fiscal understanding, the financial understanding, et cetera, fiduciary responsibilities. And you hit it out of the park, you and Vecchio. It was great. That was great. And I've been getting a lot of phone calls and compliments as well. So Bob as well. So great job.
And it was really nice that it was hosted at the Sayville High School. Just, we want people to know that Sayville is a place where you come to learn things. So,
And if the board members, I have a copy of the presentation.
moving on to the high school, this weekend, we had a debate competition with, I think it was 77 students, 46 judges and 10 coaches from around Suffolk and Nassau County. And our students did a fantastic job. In fact, 2 of our students, Sophia Cangelosi and Gianna Maniscalco, qualified for the state tournament. And so they will be going up to the states. So let's give them a hand. I talked to the staff at the high school and they, those who happened to supervise and or be at the event, and they were just blown away with how well prepared our students were and how engaged they were in their debates. And I do think the art of debate, a civil discourse in an appropriate manner, to disagree with people is kind of the American way, and to do it in a way that's civil, I think is something we want our kids to continue to do. And so this was a great example and a great opportunity for our students, as well as schools all across Suffolk and Nassau County. And I know Ron was really proud of his students. He told me it was a great event. Also at the high school, we had our history club go to the Kings Park High School Quiz Bowl, and they participated in that competition on Saturday, and they also did quite well, had a great time. And we also had on Saturday the Model United Nations students, 6 students competed at Connecticut High School. The theme was women's rights and climate change, and I heard they did a fantastic job there as well. We also had RISE students in research and science and engineering, visited the Cold Spring Harbor DNA lab to complete a laboratory procedure for human mitochondrial DNA sequencing. Students prepared a sample of their own DNA from cells obtained by saline in mouthwash, used PCR to amplify a section of their own mitochondrial DNA, and completed a very complicated process, which I'm not going to read because I don't understand it myself. And then brought it back to their school, where they then did tests on their DNA related to how their classmates and people from around the world and where they come from. And really what was kind of cool is to recognize that 99.5% of our DNA is actually identical to every other human being. It's that 0.05 that really determines the uniqueness of who you are.
this is all women, all girls, all future scientists.
Yes.
My daughter attended it and she couldn't say enough good things about it.
Yeah.
It was great.
Yeah, apparently the kids had a wonderful time and the science department should be congratulated for just creating these experiences for our high school students. Our AP art students are also preparing for an advanced visions competition. I don't know if it's a competition or just an art show. I think it's more of a show. We don't necessarily compete in art. And then the Go Ape art shows, which include students from all over Nassau and Suffolk County, and their art gets presented. And we're really excited about that happening on March 15th and February 18th. Our middle school students also continue to impress. Our robotics competition group, Tuesday, January 10th, Sayville Middle School site-based team. I'm sorry, I skipped. The robotics team, junior, their nickname was the Mechanical Animals, competed in the first Lego League Challenge. They had 10 students compete. They got a score of 205 points, in which they earned the first finalist innovation project award. And they did a wonderful job and had a great time. So I want to congratulate the teachers and the students who participated in that event. We have some great things academically going on in our schools, both during the day and also outside of the school. And I think it's important to celebrate that. Also at the middle school, we had a bingo night. The PTA sponsored it. The event coincided with the district's Family Connect night. The PTA and site-based team provided snacks and drinks to the over 80 students and families who attended. They played over 10 different games with great prizes and provisions by our sponsors. And there was also a DJ and lots of prizes, and they had a great time. So again, lots of events going on in our schools. Yes.
Something to say about the last slide. This is the first year that they went to this event. And they held their only place in the first year, so that was great.
Yeah.
It's great to see.
And for those who didn't hear, Kelly mentioned that, okay, no, it's good. This was the first year they went to the event and they placed in the, I think they were 9th overall or 8th overall, and pretty darn good. And they were invited to the next round, compete, I think on March 14th. So really excellent.
Yeah. Mark.
I think the place is in
Yeah. What else? Okay, moving on to Sunrise Drive. On January 31st, the high school peer leaders arrived in the Sunrise Drive Elementary School, arranged by Mr. Calabrese and Miss Buckley. They came to join all students for recess and lunch. Even though it was another rainy winter day, there was plenty of playing and talking, and the elementary students loved getting to know the high school students who were trained to kind of talk to them about just different topics to help enhance their play experiences in the Sunrise Elementary School. And at Cherry Avenue, we had a PS I Love You week, where basically they did different topics on each day, all focused around kindness and love and caring and friendships. And the whole week was just kind of using what they've been learning in literacy and in their studies and connecting it to kindness and being good friends and friendship, which culminates tomorrow with the PS I Love You Day, which is happening throughout the district. So we're really excited about that as well. And again, lots of things happening in all of our schools. In the athletics, we're continuing to kind of like, the fall season, we had a record number of championships, and we're headed in the same direction in our winter season. The wrestling team were league champions, and they're heading to the Suffolk County Championships on February 13th. Our girls indoor track and field, again, league champions, will compete in the New York State qualifiers on Sunday 13th or Saturday? Monday, sorry. Our boys basketball was the playoff qualifier, and their playoffs begin on the 13th as well as the girls basketball team also qualifying. I've had a chance to get to see these teams quite a bit, and it's fun to watch them evolve throughout the year. They were always good, but each game, the passing gets better, the playmaking gets better, the defense gets better, and they just look like they're really ready for the playoffs. And it's just as fun to watch them evolve as a team. We also have the boys indoor track competing in the New York State qualifiers, and the boys swimming and diving competing in the National Suffolk County Championships on February 11th. Continuing on, the girls fencing competed in the individual county championships on February 11th at Ward Melville High School, and our bowling team competed in the wild card Suffolk County tournament on yesterday. Other highlights is the competitive cheer team qualified for the Suffolk County Championships, and they will go to Newfield High School on 2/18. We want to wish them luck because they're also headed to Disneyland, where they were going to compete in Orlando this weekend. I guess they're called the Nationals.
Cheer finals.
And it's always a wonderful time, and they're a great group. The only negative of them doing that is we don't get to see them at the basketball games. But the nice thing is we've gotten the dance team started, and they have kind of been doing the halftime shows at the basketball games, and those have been fantastic. But one of the things that's really nice to see is no matter where you go, whether it's the elementary level, the middle school level, or the high school level, There are so many things happening and so many students engaged with their peers, with activities, and with their teachers. And what the research shows very clearly is that when kids feel cared for, supported, and have activities that they engage in, and they feel a sense of belonging to their school community, they engage in school and they do well. And it's clearly happening for all of our kids in the 5 schools in Sayville. I also just want to remind parents that there's a kindergarten registration, which is happening as we speak, and we'd love you to register. The sooner you register, the better we can plan for the future of the schools in terms of our kindergarten. We also have the pre-K enrollment going on as well. If you want to sign up for the pre-K programs, please do so. We did announce last week that we would have a pre-K program in each elementary school, so we want to try to get anyone who signs up for pre-K a spot, and we want to get you that spot in your home school. So the sooner you sign up, the better we'll be able to plan for that as well. Also, tomorrow is PS I Love You Day. Does anyone want to describe what that exactly entails? Because I haven't experienced that yet, but I've heard a lot about it.
Yeah, I mean, I think the mission is pretty clear. It's really about mental health and decreasing bullying and promoting that at a young age.
Great.
So it's just, again, I think they just try to boil down the message to say, tell someone you love them that you love.
And show support by wearing purple. That's
Right.
going to be also, just coming up, the Wizards are coming to town on March 2nd. We're accruing a high school, middle school, elementary school team. We also have some central office experts in basketball that are going to be joining us. Sam is going to be. Peter is going to drive to the hole. Christine and Jillian are going to be our playmakers. So we're looking forward to March 2nd, and we hope you come out and join us. It should be a fun time for all the kids in the district. And also, as was mentioned by the high school student, we do have a multicultural day on March 6th, where we're trying to really enhance our community understanding of cultures from around the world. Our music department, our art department, and our language departments prepared a really great day. We've invited parents and other members to kind of present and have tables, and we're looking forward to a great multicultural festival on March 6th. So that kind of is the around the district. And any questions before we get to our presentation on the budget part 2? Okay, great. So I'm going to come around here because we're going to start our budget presentation. Last week we presented the budget, just kind of gave an overview of all the programs we were trying to focus on. This week we're going to focus on the staffing aspect of that, the equipment, and some of the other detailed capital projects, just so the board has a detailed understanding of each item that's in the budget. But I want to kind of reemphasize both the parents and families here, as well as the families at home, the big picture of our budget. And what I want to kind of emphasize is that we want to make sure that every dollar we spend, which is a very hard-earned tax dollar of the community, goes towards programs that support our students. And when we looked at this budget, we really went line by line and took out anything we could possibly take out that really didn't achieve that goal, and tried to insert things that did achieve that goal. And I'm really proud of this budget because I believe strongly that it focuses on students and their programs in a really comprehensive way without going above the tax cap. So I think that's a really important factor. In fact, when Sam goes over the budgeting, the overall staffing for the district is up 0.4, but the way we've reapportioned staffing, we're adding quite a bit of programming despite the fact that we're not increasing our staff line. So I just want to kind of go over what that looks like. So our overall budget proposal is $102,048,891, which is a year-to-year budget-to-budget increase of 2.77%. Which is at the proposed tax rate of 285. Now, people might say, well, is this over the tax cap? Because we hear the number 2 all the time as the tax cap. The number 2 is the ballpark, but that number adjusts based on CPI. So when your CPI comes in and a number of other factors are configured into a formula, which Dr. Gerges will explain, you can arrive at a tax cap that sometimes is below 2%, as was the case last year with 1.85. Or some years you can end up with a tax cap that is above the 2%. Which we have this year, which is 285. The bottom line, though, is that our proposed budget increase is at the tax cap or below the tax cap. So it's a regular, straight up 50% vote of the community to support or to not support the budget. Just want to go over factors that led to it being where it is. We would love to come under, and we would love to save as much money as possible for taxpayers, but there's some factors that really drove this budget up quite a bit. So the expenses on the side of the slide really kind of show you why some of these prices are up and why our cap is kind of at the cap. And that's basically inflation. If we had a 6.3% inflation in New York and New Jersey area this year, Food prices are up 8.6%, energy prices are up 13%. So if you have an electric bill for the middle school for the year, which is $100,000, and you add 13%, just in the one building, you can imagine how much that would affect us in all 5 buildings. Also, costs of goods and services are significantly higher as we do projects to kind of keep the buildings in good shape in terms of health and safety. And the biggest contributor to an expense, which really hit us hard this year, was health insurance. We had a 10 to 12% increase depending on the individual plan or the family plan. This affected not only our individual employees who pay into the healthcare, but also the district as a whole. That increase for the district alone was about $1.1 million. And all of those expenses kind of happened before we even had any programming or anything for children. So if you just look at the expenses alone, they pushed us past the tax cap. And then we had to find a way to add programming while getting that number down. So Sam and I spent the days leading up to our presentation last week, cutting things from the budget to get under the cap and still be able to provide some programming for our students. The revenues helped a little bit, that had some increases. State aid was a 3% increase, so the governor kind of fulfilled her promise to fund Long Island. Long Island was disproportionately funded compared to the rest of the state, and they've made a lot of progress. I think there was an 18% overall increase in Long Island as a whole. Sayville got a 3% increase there. Other factors, kind of declining enrollment. We took advantage of some retirements by not replacing them and then adding programs somewhere else, and maintaining a healthy reserve over the last several years. So because of our good financial standing, we're able to kind of maintain also low interest rates. The interest rates actually help us in some cases because interest on monies we have in the bank yield us more money in the past than in the past. But on the other side, any debts that we have, the interest affects us negatively on that side. And the 2% tax cap is in place, which kind of holds you to a certain amount. We surveyed our parents. About 520 parents responded to the survey. There was a question about finance and what parents wanted to see more of in our school district. 335 parents responded. And this is just kind of a graphic which shows the range of responses that parents kind of responded to. The number one thing that came up is they wanted to see more science, technology, engineering, and mathematics opportunities for students at the elementary, middle, and high school level. We also wanted to see overall building improvements. Air conditioning was mentioned quite a bit. I just want to caution, just because it was mentioned doesn't mean we get it, because those are multi-million-dollar projects that we couldn't afford to do within the tax cap. Curriculum changes, innovative approaches to instruction, and expanding the music and the arts program. There was an interesting kind of theme that we love our sports programs, we do great in sports, but we don't need to fund them more. We should really focus the funding on other extracurriculars like drama, the arts, and other things. That theme kind of wove through. Not that there was a lack of support for sports by any means, but just let's focus on some other areas as well to get that beefed up in the program. We also asked our teachers what they thought. And again, most of the responses were about building upgrades, in addition to air conditioning requests because of the heat in September and June and the difficulty of keeping students focused. We also had requests for improved classroom spaces, flexible seating, more modernized 21st century learning opportunities for students. We haven't had a science lab upgraded, I think, since 2002. So the newest science labs are about 20 years old. Some of them were original 1970s, if you look at the middle school labs. So we want to look at our learning spaces. And then we have 3 science labs at the elementary schools. And the teachers felt that that would be a place to kind of focus some attention. Staff development came up quite a bit, technology. And this was in both the parent and the teacher survey. More supports for students, socially, emotionally, kind of supporting the mental wellness of students. They're seeing an increased number of students with high anxiety, depression, and that affects their ability to engage in school. So there was a kind of a focus on more social emotional learning programming and support for students. So what do we put in this year's budget? Because of funding from the state, we got $745,000, which is about $300,000 more than last year for our pre-K program. So we are going to open an additional 2 to 3 sections of pre-K classrooms in the district, which will allow us to spread those programs out so that we have one program at each of our elementary schools, Cherry, Lincoln, and Sunrise. And we'd like to be able to offer that to any parents in the district who request it. Currently, with the current enrollment we have, it looks like we can do that with 6 sections. If enrollment goes up, we'll add a 7th section, and we'll put that section at the school with the largest enrollment. So we try to get as many students in the school where they are going to be for their entire elementary time. Just something to note about this, though, just because the state funds the program doesn't mean it's free. And what I mean by that is they put a cap on how much you can spend per student. So you're allowed to spend $5,400 per student in the pre-K program. Now, you're only allowed to have 18 students in a section, which we agree on, because they're little, and you get a teacher and an aide in the section. But the state funds then for 18 students is about $97,500. However, it costs us $150,000 to run a section with a teacher and an aide and equipment. So really, even though the state is saying we're giving us $745,000, if we run 6 sections, we can only access $583,000 of those dollars, which means the district has to pick up the difference between the 583 and the number we need to run the 6 sections. So it is going to cost us in our budget about $150,000 to run an additional 3 sections, which we are doing in this budget because we are committed to a pre-K program for our families. However, we just want to clarify that it's not dollar for dollar. They're giving us $745,000, but because of the cap per student, we're only allowed to access $583,000 for our programs. Now, there is advocacy in progress to lessen the restrictions on the UPK mandates. And if they remove that $5,400 cap and allow us to kind of spend the money as we see fit, then we could use the full $745,000, and the cost of the 6 sections would be practically zero for us. So we're advocating for that with the governor and with the legislature. We're hoping to hear something soon so that we can access what they say is the full amount of money that we can get. I want to talk about reading and writing and math for a moment. And the reason I want to talk about that is because it affects why we're choosing to add some positions in the elementary school. So if you look at the top line in this chart, the one that ends with the 5.2, that's a typical child, and it shows their reading level on the left column and their grade level corresponding to their age on the bottom line. So a typical child, when they head to elementary school, if they go to class every day and they engage and they don't have any significant issues, usually leaves elementary school in 5th grade on a 5.2 reading level. Some a little higher, some a little lower, but the average child. The bottom line is a student who is at risk in 1st grade. And if we notice they're at risk in 1st grade and they do nothing but go to class every day, they will leave elementary school on a grade 2.5 level. That's not acceptable to us, so we provide AIS support. So depending on the type of support you get, you can kind of close that gap. But what the research is very clear about is that if you do a push and support on a daily basis in your K-1-2, and a reading teacher pushes in every day, or a math teacher pushes in every day, and provides support to the whole class with the teacher, and they work in small groups with the children, you start to get that dotted line at the top, which shows the same kid who is at risk in 1st grade is now leaving elementary school on a 4.9 instead of a 3.2 with a typical AIS level of support. So what we want to do is enhance our staffing for math AIS and reading AIS and restructure how we provide that staffing, hitting the K-1-2 really hard so we can get that 4.9, because our belief is that every child that attends the Sayville school should leave elementary school reading, writing, and doing math at or above grade. So to do that, we're proposing in this budget a number of positions. One is a full-time math AIS teacher at Sunrise Drive. Another is a full-time math AIS teacher at Lincoln Avenue. Those teachers are going to be part of the schedule, which hit and it's spread out among those schools, and there's a push-in model for tier 2 support and a pull-out model for tier 3 support. And we're going to spend the year kind of researching that, studying how it works, and it can have an impact on our kids. At Cherry Avenue, we're going to do the same thing with reading. We're going to have an additional reading teacher at Cherry Avenue, and they're going to do the same thing, a push-in model for K-1-2, and we're going to see how it goes, do some research, collect some data, and then if all goes well, phase 2 would be that Sunrise and Lincoln get the reading teacher in the next budget cycle, and the Cherry gets the math teacher in the next cycle, not for this year's budget, but for next year's budget. So the idea would be that we would go from 2 reading teachers and 1 math teacher in each elementary school to 3 reading teachers and 2 math teachers in each elementary school. But it's not just adding staffing, it's also adjusting our approach and focusing heavily on the K-1-2 push-in model. The other nice thing about the push-in model is when the teacher pushes into the classroom and they work in small groups, not only does it help the kids who are struggling, but it also enhances the contact time that students get with the classroom teacher and the reading teacher who are in the middle range and also on the high enrichment age. So you can differentiate the type of work you do with students to meet the needs of high-end performing students as well as struggling students. The other thing that's in this budget is something called an RTI coordinator and instructional coach, or a teacher on assignment. And one of the things that came up in the parent surveys and in the teacher surveys and in the focus groups was this sense that depending on which elementary school you go to, you might get a different level of service depending on your need. So a kid in Sunrise may get every day now support, and a kid who struggles in a similar way in another school, like Cherry or Lincoln, may get it every other day. So the idea is you want consistency in how kids get support across all three buildings. So this coordinator would sit in on the team meetings about students, listen to kind of the issues the student was having, make suggestions to try in the classroom, could also push in and coach teachers on areas that students need help with, and then make consistent decisions across all three elementary schools about the level of reading or math support that happens in each elementary school. This would ensure a consistent approach to reading, writing, and math support in all three elementary schools. And the final piece of this kind of academic instructional support is a 0.4 increase for special education co-teaching. In the elementary schools currently, there's a co-teacher in the special education classes for 4 or 5 of the 6 periods in the day. And there's a moment where the special teacher leaves and goes and teaches another subject to a different group of kids. And we feel that we believe in the philosophy that the co-teacher would truly co-teach the whole day and share the kids equally and plan and design lessons together, then they have to be in the room the whole time. And that was something that we heard from our teachers at Sunrise and Lincoln, and we want to kind of honor that request in this budget. Phase 3 budget year would be 3 years out. We would be looking to have a director of elementary literacy to coordinate the literacy programs at the elementary schools, and 2 additional elementary instructional coaches so that teachers would have access to support when they design their units of study, modeling best practices, and coaching teachers so that we can raise the level of instructional support for teachers throughout the district. And that would mean between the one we're proposing this year and the 2 we're proposing in year 3, there would be 1 coach in each elementary school building to support teacher instruction. So these are the proposed positions for academic supports. Another area we want to focus on based on the feedback from the parent and teacher surveys is STEAM, science, technology, engineering, art, and mathematics. We have 3 STEAM labs in each of the elementary schools, but we don't have any STEAM teachers. So the idea is the teachers visit the labs. We want to create some engineering, robotics, and coding experiences for elementary students. The research shows that when you do this, it leads to more kids being interested in things in middle school and high school, and it enhances our program. We know there's a huge need for engineers and robotics and coding in the United States, and oftentimes we're hiring people from outside of the country because we can't find enough people. So if we can get kids excited and interested about these fields early on, we'll help give them the skills they need to compete with the global economy that we have. So next year, we're proposing a full-time STEAM teacher and enrichment teacher at Cherry Avenue. They would teach enrichment at Cherry and do STEAM. They would design the curriculum, experiment with the next generation science standards. Teachers would visit the classroom a certain number of times a week, in addition to their normal science instruction. And once we get that kind of down pat, we would suggest in phase 2, we then add 2 more teachers to go to Sunrise and Lincoln so that we have a full STEAM and enrichment program. This would also enhance our enrichment program. Currently, we have an enrichment program where the teacher travels to the 3 buildings. We had some trouble staffing that this year. And so we have some high school and middle school teachers pushing down to kind of support that program. We want to beef that up a little bit in terms of the enrichment opportunities for our gifted and talented students. So each STEAM teacher would not only do the STEAM instruction in their rooms, buildings, they would also do enrichment for their buildings as well. And the final proposal in terms of staffing is related to world language. We've been talking about this for several years. And as enrollment decreases at the high school and middle school level, we have an opportunity to take some language teachers and kind of shift them down to the elementary level. So next year, we're proposing a kindergarten world language experience twice a week. The teacher would push into the kindergarten classroom and start teaching Spanish and French just as an introductory. And that would be for next year's budget. In the following year's budget, this would be a 5-year commitment. Those kindergartners would move to grade 1 and the continued instruction would happen with them. In year 3, it would go to grade 2. In year 4, grades 3 and 4. And in year 5, we would have a K-6 program. The idea would be that at the end of 5th grade, students would choose French or Spanish and then go into middle school to an every other day language program in French or Spanish. And again, you know, we've heard that we want to explore other languages, but right now those would be the languages part of the plan. The overall staffing implications of this over 5 years is 2.5 teachers. But as we see decreased enrollment at the high school, rather than accessing language teachers who are really high quality, who have been with the district for 20 and 30 years, we would then shift their responsibilities and add staffing to support the world language program. So coming back around, this is the basic proposed budget. It's $102 million, $48,891. It's a $2.746 million increase from the year before. which is a 277% increase, and now I'm gonna ask Sam to come up and explain all the nitty-gritty details. I just wanted to make sure that we're kind of promoting what we're getting for our kids in this budget.
Thank you, Dr. Ferris. For a second, I thought I saw.
You did.
So as was just mentioned, the budget increase from 23-23 to 23-24 is approximately 2.746 million or 2.77%. With respect to the tax levy limit, also known as the tax cap, the projected increase is 2.85%, which is the proposed amount that would support this budget and its initiatives. So breaking down the components of the budget and what makes it up. As with any other school district or any other area in the school sector, salaries and fringe benefits are the majority, anywhere from 75 to 80%, depending on the district. And as you see, year to year, that percentage is relatively the same. We are going up 1.96 million or 2.66% in our salaries and benefits, as you see the breakdown for 23-24 versus 22-23. Inclusive are 6 retirees, 5 teachers, 1 nurse. Overall, though, based on staff restructuring, special class programs, we are anticipating a net 0.4 FTE addition in teaching ranks. And ultimately, this maintains and expands 22-23 staffing levels in certain areas within the proposed budget. Broken down into the specific areas of staffing in the district, you see beginning with central office administrators all the way to our pool adult ed instructors. We have a total FTE amount in the 23-24 budget of 524.27 employees. Looking a little bit closer at our fringe benefit and what changed due to rates that came out relatively recently with the employee retirement system and TRS, also known as ERS, the teachers retirement system. Lower rates based on the salaries projected. We do have a decrease as reflected in the 3rd column. Social Security, also known as FICA, we do project an increase based also on current limits and also contractual obligations increases. Workers' comp we project is flat, same for life insurance and unemployment. Disability, we do see a bit of a decline. And as has been mentioned in previous meetings and earlier today, our health insurance costs are the biggest driver, and we are projecting a $1.1 million increase. To recap, what was said in December at the last meeting, our family plan for anyone enrolled in night shift is going up 14.9% and approximately 13% for the individual plan rates. So overall, we're seeing a 3.76% increase from this current school year to the next school year. Graphically speaking, this is what it does look like. As you see, there were 3 years where it was relatively flat or close to, and it's fair to say that those were some of the years categorized by the pandemic. But as reopening and post-pandemic took effect, you see that the health insurance drivers really moved the graph in the direction that you see. Overall, there is a 5-year change from the 1920 school year, the beginning of the 1920 school year to next year, of 12.28% and an average of about 2.5% over that time. Debt service, the next area, and we see our library principal and interest, which we do pay, but we do recoup. We have a $762,000 line, and also our principal and interest for our bonds and our energy performance contract, and also what we project for our tax anticipation note. You will see that that is a much larger change because, as was mentioned before, the increase in interest rates, it works both ways. What you might receive in interest on investments, you also do have to pay for any sort of borrowings. So we are projecting that much of an increase. To kind of put in perspective, last year, our rate was less than 0.5%. Overall, we are looking at an increase of $391,000. There are a couple of lines that do reflect that change in particular. Graphically speaking, you do see that the debt service levels have been relatively maintained between $4.6 and $5 million. Overall, it's a 0.02% increase, which is almost a 0.0% average over the 5-year period. This is a graph that we used at the last presentation, kind of showing what our future look at debt service is, and also the decline that will happen within the next approximately 5 years or so. And what is the purpose of debt service? Continuing to maintain level debt service expenditures over future years allows for the upkeep of the district's infrastructure, capital upgrades in particular. It does maintain our expenses without adding additional tax burden to the tax rate. It fills the gap when we have decreasing debt, which does have a positive effect on the tax cap calculation. And also decreasing debt service drives the tax cap percentage down. Building aid, we are aided approximately 68.6% on each dollar of approved capital expense. So let's say we have $1 million project, we would have a return of $686,000 that comes back to the district amortized over several years. Just recapping the slide from the last presentation, the approved bond work from the 2022 referendum, the reskinning of roofs, and you see the timeline here for 23 and 24. And one of the items that has been discussed throughout the year between Dr. Ferris and myself is a capital reserve fund, and what is a capital reserve fund and what is its purpose. So a capital reserve fund is a separate reserve fund maintained by the district solely for the purpose of funding any sort of building project, capital project, similar to the 9,000 line in the budget that the board approves and that the voters would ultimately approve each year. The difference is, let me go through the bullet points before going through the differences. It's available for funding project costs for which bonds may be issued. Expenditures do have to be specific, again, similar to the transfer to capital line that's in the school budget. So, and mind you, this is straight off the controller's website, the descriptions, not that we are going to look to purchase school buses, which is the first example, but it would be for facility construction, equipment, and annual appropriations to fund reserves are further authorized by the voters. So what that means is, should a capital reserve fund be established, it cannot be just expense, or we're going to just take money from the capital reserve. It has to be put forth to the voters and voted upon before any sort of action can be taken. So funds, again, may not be expended without voter approval. A proposition to use these funds must be specific to a set of projects and dollar amounts. So let's say, for example, we're going to redo the lights at the high school. We have to say, project to replace all the lighting at the high school, which will cost approximately X amount of dollars. Disclaimer: funds must be invested in accordance with Section 11 of the General Municipal Law, with any interest or capital gain realized accruing to the fund, similar to any other reserve that we do hold.
Excuse me. I'm finished.
So, other data points, as I said, it does require voter approval for its establishment and for the purpose of completing district-wide renovations and reconstruction projects. How is it funded? Existing budget monies would be used to capitalize the new fund. For example, if there's in any given year, if the district, let's say, spends less money than it had earlier anticipated, those surplus monies may be transferred by Board of Ed approval only into the newly established capital reserve fund, should that also be approved by the voters, the establishment fund, that is.
The establishment for that fund, is it done during a normal trustee and budget vote?
Yes.
You know, line on the.
Yes, it would be the third Tuesday in May.
And we've done this in the past, I mean, like the Univent conversions, we did, right, that was with capital. When we exchanged all the Univents.
That I believe was done through a transfer to capital line. The capital reserve is a separate fund that is voted upon, not just for the establishment, but again, to any sort of expense would have to be approved by the voters also on that third Tuesday.
And there is a cap on that fund.
Yes.
Once it will be
Yes,
another-
and I just want to mention, that's a great question. The cap on that fund, it's cumulative. So let's say, for the sake of argument, the fund is for $5 million. It's, let's say it's 1 million each year, $500,000, so on and so forth. It's a cumulative amount. So it's not like, let's say I have 4 million and over time I expend it down to 1 million, I can bring it back up to 5 million. No, it's a cumulative amount. And also there's a shelf life for that. After 8 years, the fund should be depleted. If not, it has to be returned to the taxpayers.
So one of the things we're going to propose to you is the idea of creating a capital reserve fund, putting it up for budget approval during the same day as the budget vote. And the purpose of the fund would be to accumulate money over a period of 8 years to help to renovate STEAM classrooms, science laboratories, instructional spaces, modernize instructional spaces, improve the theater at the middle school, high school, and the small theater at the high school, and real kind of focused funding on instructional spaces throughout the district, so students can attend looking into a 21st century learning approach. The concept is, if you wait for a bond and you try to do all those things at once, you're asking the community to pass a 30 to 40 to $50 million bond, and that's really unfair to the community and adds to your debt service in a large. And you can't do these projects in a budget year because of the tax cap. So the capital reserve is a way in between a long range bond project, which really takes care of roofs and windows and boilers projects, and a year-to-year budget, which can only take care of basic things in your. So if you want to get movement in your science labs, I'd love to redesign the entire science lab setup at the middle school. So it's a 21st century learning environment for students. She's nodding, she's a science teacher. Those are original 1970 labs. They're not designed for the kind of work we want our students to be engaging in as next generation science students. Same thing at the high school. The newest lab in the district is 2002. That makes it 21 years old. The oldest labs are much older than that. So if we want our kids to have experiences where they're engaging in science, and not just science, but science, technology, engineering, robotics, all of the kind of skill sets that we're looking for in the 21st century education, we have to kind of invest in that. But we can't afford to do it in a budget because of the tax cut. And we can't wait for a bond because we don't want to put a bond up that the community is going to reject because it's $40 to $50 million. So the way you do this is at the end of each year, monies that are not used for the budget, which happens, sometimes you put into capital reserve, sometimes you use it to get earmarked and put into a pot. And that pot grows over a couple of years, and then you have a second vote with the budget, with the taxpayers. Okay, we've accumulated $5 million. We want to renovate 5 science labs in the middle school, 7 science labs in the high school, and 3 science labs in the elementary schools. And then the voters come out again and vote again whether they want to allow you to do that with the money you've accumulated. So the first vote is to establish the fund, and then we can now put away money each year to kind of towards that goal. And then the second vote is to spend that money. The thing is, if we don't do that mid piece, we will never be able to keep pace with other school districts and what they're providing for their students in terms of the science lab spaces and the STEAM lab spaces. And in my mind, next generation learning in all classrooms. You know, English classrooms should look very specific and support reading and writing. Math classrooms should look very specific and support mathematical problem solving. Every classroom shouldn't look like it did when we went to school. So that's kind of the approach we're going to take to try to attack this. So that it happens for our kids in the next 5 to 10 years, not, 20 years from now, we'll figure out a way to do it through a huge bond.
So as mentioned, and to reiterate again, this fund, the capital reserve fund, can only be used for capital projects, which are, as on the screen, meant to enhance the redesign of classrooms, as an example, theater and stage lighting, windows, doors, boilers, electric, plumbing, masonry, facility improvements, in all regards, whether they be part of the building envelope, athletic, etc. So that's, again, for the purpose of enhancing the instructional and curricular experiences for all students. The district would apply for state aid, so any project that is approved by the voters, gone through and completed, it is actually eligible for state aid at the rate that I mentioned before, which is 68.6%. And again, for funding, it would utilize existing budget monies that are unspent at the end of the fiscal year that the board would authorize to transfer into the fund, and would allow the district to avoid borrowing additional funds through bond issuances over time. And again, passage of this proposition will not increase taxes only because, as I mentioned, it is only funded through any surplus monies that may exist at the end of any fiscal cycle.
So
I'm sorry.
Sorry, go ahead.
Just a question now, this capital bond money, you said that we use it for a specific project, the voters still would have to approve that project.
From the capital reserve.
Not a bond.
You're talking about the capital reserve, or?
Yeah, capital reserve.
Yes, that's correct. So the timeline wise, should the board move through with it, it would be on the resolution on May 16th.
All right.
If that is approved by the community, the fund is established as of June 30th, 2023. Through the budget cycle and whatnot, there is the motions in the August, September, as to if there are any surplus monies, how they would be allocated in terms of reserves and fund balances. And at that point, the determination would be whether any funds would go into the capital reserve. The following year, now we're talking at the end of the 23-24 school year, let's say that there's money in the fund and there's a project that the board would like to put forward to the community. That would then have to go on a separate proposition that the voters would then vote upon for it.
So it's not done by board resolution, it's done by community use.
That's correct. The only board resolutions that happen are the resolutions to place it on the ballot.
And I think the beauty of doing this approach is that we can enhance our instructional spaces over a period of time. We use funds that it does not increase the year-to-year budget at all. And we get 68 cents on the dollar back from state aid.
Yes.
So it's a very good use of monies that doesn't increase your yearly budget. And then it also allows you to not have to pass very large bond expenditures when those bonds come up.
Is there any project outside the SED approval that would not get state aid for?
Okay.
Is there any project we would not get state aid for?
The only,
I know with much discussions,
so when you put up what's known as an
such as the turf field, what I'm asking.
Say again.
I mean, in years past, I mean, there's some turf fields were not being approved for state aid. Can this be done the same way? Again, my concern would be, is there any project that would not be state aidable?
To my knowledge, from the ones that have been described now, but it's again very project specific. And I don't know if we want to pursue something that doesn't get state aid.
It's not for staffing, it's not for staffing capital projects. And also, I just want to emphasize, our focus on this particular capital reserve will be for instructional spaces, not for anything other than improving and enhancing instructional spaces in the classrooms that the children sit. Nothing else but that.
So we're not talking roofs and things like that.
No.
That's
Major capital.
Right, and that's where the bond, like we passed the bond for $10 million, that's replacing all of the roofs across the district over a 2-year period. I want to keep the bond small and for those kind of things, and I want to use a capital reserve to kind of enhance instructional spaces. And then we always account for contingencies. So we have to budget for things to go wrong in the district, right? So, like if you have a house and it costs you $50,000 to maintain your house every year, you don't just have $50,000. You have $10,000 put aside in case your roof caves in. So we have contingencies built into our budget should things go wrong. Some years we get 5 or 6 snow days, so we're paying overtime to the guys for that, to clean those walkways. Other years we don't get any snow days. And basically, we don't. That money, we're gonna snow tomorrow. That money is then in the budget at the end of the year. So now you can say as a board, oh, there's $50,000 that didn't get spent on snow removal, because this was a particularly warm year. So we're gonna approve moving that $50,000 into the reserve. Now that reserve sits there and builds over time. And then when we have enough money to do a project, you then say, okay, we'd like to do a project. You put it up for voter approval. We say exactly what the project is, whether it's a theater development or a science lab or a STEAM lab at the elementary schools, whatever it is. He's smiling again. And then the voters vote on it. But the nice thing is nothing you do isn't voter approved. So everyone has a say in whether we do it or not. And also it doesn't increase your year-to-year budget, and you can start to tackle things which I don't believe have been tackled for quite some time in this district.
I think to that point, I feel like we had some success in the past too with the EPC. When there's an intersection between items that we want to put into the bond, we were able to pull items out of the bond, or if we went over budget. It was a nice way that was zero cost to the taxpayer to knock off some projects as well. So
I want to reiterate a point related to that, and also what was said in terms of process. Anything related to the establishment and expenditure of a capital reserve must be voter approved. The only time a resolution comes into play is to resolve that those projects go on the ballot. From there, then it's within the taxpayers' purview as to whether or not to approve.
The only risk I see is that you establish this fund, you put money into this fund, and then it doesn't pass. So then it goes immediately back to the taxpayer, or how does that, what?
So, are you talking about the establishment?
No,
Fine.
establish the fund,
Okay.
you put $1 million in there.
Okay.
And then two years later, you say, okay, we want to do this project, that gets voted down, what happens to those?
The monies stay into the account until either another voter approved resolution is on the ballots. let's assume for the sake of argument that all of them fail, just for the sake of argument. The fund is established up to a certain day, so a certain date. So let's say the capital reserve fund will be established for an amount of $10 million and will have a lifespan of 8 years. Let's say as we approach the 8th year, that the money's still there, or any monies are still there, and there are no voter approved resolutions, no voter approved propositions on the ballot, then the money would have to go back to the taxpayers.
Also just. you know,
There is a
one of-
usable life for this fund.
And one of the things that we're earmarking the fund for is based on the parent and teacher feedback. So we're not throwing up things that, you know, nobody wants. Now, the whole community will have to come out and vote on it. But we're assuming based on the surveys we've given that, you know, if STEM was important to people and STEM is something parents wanted, and if we put up a resolution to, you know, spend the money out of a capital reserve that already exists, we would hope that that would pass. If it doesn't, we keep, okay, they don't want that. Let's find out from the community, survey them. What do you want us to spend the money on? You know, it has to be within the realm of what the capital reserve is set up for. And if the community passed to open it, we could argue that there should be some variation of proposal that they would approve to spend it.
Is that voting process a la carte? Like, yes, I'll vote yes for the science rooms, but I don't like theater, so I'm voting against the theater.
Typically, the resolutions are done as a whole. You know, and it says, shall the community approve a capital reserve proposition for the following, and it will list, say, Sayville High School auditorium lighting for the amount of approximately X, comma. Middle school science labs in the amount of Y, and so on and so forth. So it's not that it can be separated into, it's usually.
It's all.
bundled.
However, you can do an exit poll, or you can poll families and say, why did you vote yes or no? And then if you find out that there were 3 items, but everyone was definitely opposed to the 3rd item, you could put up another vote with the 3rd item missing and the 2 items that seem to have support.
But that would require another
And then you'd have to have an additional vote,
additional.
which you would have to set up, or you could wait till the following year.
Or just at the end of say the academic year, if there's unspent funds. Have some of those funds historically been used on projects like this?
Well, so some of our funds go back and help to keep our reserves healthy.
Right.
We put some money into the reserves. Danny might identify a problem area like the parking lot that has potholes. And we might say, oh, that's a health and safety issue, so we'll put some money on that. We might look to get some supplies or things that we couldn't budget, we couldn't afford, but we wanted to get, but you know, so there's different variations of how that money is spent. This one, I think I feel more comfortable with because it's fully voter approved.
Right.
Whereas those things we're deciding kind of without voter approval, so
Right.
to speak, even though they've approved the budget. These are items we're fixing, which need fixing, but not necessarily voter approved items.
I should mention in terms, just like one last point on that, with respect to the timeline. If the reserve is established as of June 30th, 2023, expenditures cannot happen, would not happen for at least 1 year after its establishment. So just wanted to put that up. Okay. Moving right along, the next area of the budget where we typically look at is contractual expenditures. These are our 4,000 codes, which you see in the budget, which include our insurance costs, not health insurance, but our general liability, crime, property insurance, our buildings and grounds repairs, which was just mentioned, our plant and operation expenses, attorneys, auditors, professional services, any sort of travel, postage, maintenance, repairs, rentals, dues, fees, and our photocopy rentals. Year to year, we are seeing a 7% increase. There is a noticeable increase both in our buildings and grounds codes, particularly because of the utility shocks that we have seen, and also in our general insurance, which is typical of the trend industry-wide. Graphically speaking, you do see that there is a nudge up for the upcoming year. BOCES, one of the largest and most prominent expenses in any school district. As you know, we do subscribe primarily with Eastern Suffolk BOCES and their services. For the 2022-23 school year, our expenditures were $6.1 million. We are actually seeing a decrease in our BOCES expenses, particularly because we do see a bit of smoothing with, number one, our career and tech ed. Not that we have a lot less students, but they do have a 3-year average. They did maintain their cost increase at 3.5%. So It's not as big a shock as other years, but also the number of students that we have sent to BOCES. It has been reduced for a host of reasons, either bringing them back or due to graduations. Cost-effective and value-added approach to providing specific educational services as well as other services students. Yes.
Do you have an approximate count, how many you're going places?
Yes. Yep, he's got it. BOCES services normally generate either BOCES aid or expenditure-driven aids such as high-cost aid, depending on the type of services provided. BOCES aid is expected to be 1.41 million for this school year, and then the estimate for next year is 1.515 million. That's from the governor's run. Different kind of graphic, just to kind of show that BOCES aid is generally approximate for aidable services, brings back about 54%. Those are the budgets that are mentioned that are displayed over there. Special education, transportation that generates high cost aid, and transportation aid that's not BOCES aid. Those are the budgeted amounts. Again, as I said, for the 2023-24 school year, we're looking at about $1.5 million in aid, which is about 107,000 more than the prior year. Graphically speaking, we do see how the expenditures line up, and as was just mentioned, it is lower than the previous year. Supplies. Overall, we do see a bit of a decline in supplies. This is again going line by line through the budget and trying to maximize as best we could. Based on our projected enrollment in 22-23, the district spends approximately $744 per student. Supply appropriations have been used to for the return to in-person instructional materials this year more than last. And as you see, while not one of the larger parts of the budget in comparison, you do see the steady bar charts on the screen. Textbooks and workbooks, that code is flat. What do we use our textbook monies for? Chromebooks, ebooks, and the continued purchase of those and compatible software, developing classroom reading and writing libraries, and next year we are anticipated to receive approximately $157,000 in textbook aid, rounding that number up. And graphically speaking, that code has remained flat for 5 years. So overall, for this section of the budget, we'll obviously be going through two more large areas in the forthcoming budget presentations. And recapping, $102,048,891, 2.77 budget to budget, 2.85 for the proposed tax rate increase, which is at the tax levy limit.
Can I just ask, just to check? The question has come up about the homestead rate and the non-homestead rate. And my understanding, the reason that we don't assess it right now, because we don't know what that rate would be.
Yes.
That's based on information you get later.
Yeah.
But this is the average rate across both.
Well, it's two things. So the proposed tax rate, this is a 2.85 based on the current. Any sort of estimate, I would be using the current rate, and then I would be adjusting for it once I get the number from the assessor's office, because that's the most up-to-date and recent information that I have. Last year, I introduced this, and I just want to go over it again, only because at this point in December of 2022, the numbers related to inflation really started to come in and provide, some alarms. So updating the chart for the end of 2022, we see what inflation looked like throughout certain regions and the country, also known as the Consumer Price Index in this regard. So the U.S. city average for the 12 months ending in December 2022, the CPI was up 6.5%. Particular to the Northeast region, 6.1%, and particular to the measure that we are given for the tax levy limit, the New York, Newark, Jersey City rate, it was 6.3%, which is interesting. It's almost an average of the U.S. city average and the Northeast region. So while inflation did drop in the latter months, it still was exceptionally high in comparison to any recent memory. The New York State tax cap, based on the formula, does have a 2% or CPI, whichever is less. That's how the law is drafted. So even though inflation was 6%, the only number that we can put in for the calculation is 2%. Hence, sometimes the misnomer of the 2% tax cap. For the tax levy limit, as mentioned, for 23-24, the proposed amount is 285. and some other facts that the district bond rating has been a AA1 since 2016. For the 8th straight year, there has been no fiscal stress reported, and for the 2nd straight year, there are no external audit management letter comments. So the continued fiscal health helps to sustain the district's instructional program and vision moving forward. And Dr. Kashoni. Thank you.
So I just wanted to highlight some of our successes that we've seen as a district, specifically from this year. There are a bunch of bullet points on there. I'm just going to summarize it for you. The 2022 Sayville High School graduating class had a high enrollment rate in higher education, with 81% enrolling in a 4-year program, which was the highest ever recorded for our school district. 95% of the class enrolled in a 2- or 4-year institution of higher education, which is incredible. Sayville High School is also one of the best in its cluster in terms of graduation rate and advanced Regents diploma rate. And it has the best 4-year college enrollment rate in our cluster, which is the cluster of Islip schools. 42% of our class enrolled in at least one AP course and scored a 3 or better. We offered OC-Ed, which was through BOCES, with 62 students, Tom, or 6% of the student body enrolled. We've had a strong record of on-time graduation for the last 12 years for our ICT students. All of them have graduated. And our students participate in 2.1 activities outside of the classroom, average student. This current school year, we had some new co-curricular and extracurricular investments, including Baking Club, Future Business Leaders of America, Creative Writing Club, karaoke, video announcement production and broadcast, integrated athletics, and critical mentoring. So we added a lot this year. Some of the other things happening, we've had strong ongoing education initiatives in the elementary and middle schools, including the implementation of TC Reading and Writing program, which has led to improved skills and engagement. We added a differentiated language rich math program that demonstrated student growth, research-based math intervention program, and ongoing transition towards full-day integrated co-teaching. We've also incorporated 21st century library models and technology, expanded world language at the elementary level, and continue to have an award-winning athletics program. The initiatives aim to provide exceptional opportunities for all students through preserve educational programs and effective staff development, along with extra learning clubs focused on various curricular activities.
So in summary, the 23-24 draft budget, as was mentioned, is $102,848,891. That's the proposal. It represents a spending increase of $2,746,734, or 2.77% budget to budget increase. A proposed tax rate of 2.85%. Again, using the current numbers, and an estimated annual increase of $228.19 a month, and it is at the property tax levy limit.
So at this time, just want to take any questions from members of the board regarding the proposed budget.
Well, good.
So just to go over the other areas of the budget at the next meeting, which is March 2nd, transportation, equipment, transfer to capital and special aided funds, which kind of goes hand in hand with what we discussed today. Capital reserve fund, update on revenues and discussion and review on fund balance and reserve funds. We may also hear some updated information on state aid, since that seems to be an extremely hot topic of discussion since the aid runs were released last week. Continued discussion on establishing a capital reserve fund and any sort of possible budget modifications.
And we hope that it's clear to you from our presentations that this budget was constructed with the feedback from our parents and our staff, and aims hard at improving and enhancing our instructional programs, as well as having a short-term plan to increase the quality of our instructional spaces in the school.
Thank you to business office, your office, and the curriculum office for
Yes.
addressing these. Well job. Got well done. Thank you. Go for these. Next budget hearing is actually this Wizard game. I'm sorry, isn't that the Wizard game on March 2nd?
Yes, it is.
You'll be playing a quick game.
We were on the schedule first.
We'll play in the first half and then we'll come here for the second. Just my final announcements. There is a emails went out today from our elementary principals. There'll be 2 parent workshops next week regarding Aaron's Law. Both presentations will be delivered by a representative from the Crimes Victim Center, Parents for Megan's Law. The first is on Wednesday, February 15th via Zoom at 6:30 p.m. This presentation is entitled Apple of My Eye. The presentation provides resources for parents and guardians as in designed to educate parents on prevention tips, red flags, and trigger abusers who try to access children inappropriately. The second presentation is on February 16th. It's called You're in Charge, and it's in line with the letter that was previously disseminated from principals. Aaron's Law presenters will deliver the exact lesson that we're going to be doing with our K-3 students and our, and our 3 through 5, 4th and 5th grade students. So part of the state regulation is that we teach our children about predators and sexual abuse and ensure that they have the skills and tools to identify and report to an adult. We have a very well-designed program that is very appropriate for the ages of our students, but that second Zoom will show parents exactly the lessons that students will be getting as a result of that law. So we invite you to the first Zoom on the 15th and the second Zoom on the 16th. And that's it for me. Thank you.
Next item on the agenda is Board of Education discussion. We have a number of items there. The first one is a draft of the 23-24 school calendar. Do we have to approve it tonight, or is it the second?
I think we're approving it tonight, yes.
Correct. Any
Any
major changes or?
No,
Postings, which
Yeah, we align with the BOCES calendar.
we're very much in line with it. The only thing we did, tonight's draft different from last week was add the additional clerical and custodial children, holidays. But there are already days that were, no school days for attendance.
One of the things that we did a little differently also was, if you notice, next year's calendar is a little wonky with Passover and with Easter. So Passover is in the middle of the last week of April, and Easter obviously is on Sunday in the first week of April. Usually they're pretty close together and you get the week off for both. So we're giving the week off for the Passover because it's in the middle of the week. And then in the Easter break, we're giving the Friday and the Monday off. However, we're added a professional development day for teachers on the Thursday. So that will give our families Thursday, Friday, and Monday off of the Easter weekend in case they have travel plans, but it will also give us an opportunity to do professional development with our teachers prior to that long weekend. So that's a slight adjustment we did.
next item, last Saturday, I had the opportunity to, along with Mr. Cooley, Sam, Christine, and I think Dawn Lake Match was at along with legislative breakfast. There's probably about 400 school board members with mixed in superintendents and a bunch of students. It was probably one of the better ones. We haven't been able to get there for about 2 years. We did see some of the local officials there. There's a couple of very good questions that were asked, and some of the questions that have been asked at this board meeting as well. One of the questions was asked, can the legislature support working with local school districts to cut through the red tape and hopefully get our important fundings for schools in a timely manner, which is a question I've been raising all the time, specifically tied to tan borrowing. There's some questions about marijuana that's being available in packaged towards kids, gummy worms and gummy bears and stuff, and there's been a lot of problems with that. There was a question about the COVID vaccine, which I know has been a hot topic lately, and not one legislator or a public official said they would support such a thing. There was a really interesting discussion about.
But before you go on, what they said about that is there's a legislator upstate or somewhere that puts this bill in, but that it's not going to go anywhere, that there is no support on either side. How many legislators?
Any legislator put any bill in at any time.
They put it in because you can.
Yeah, he can.
That's right.
But there's no traction.
Yeah, and I've spoken
I'm
to
sorry, Kevin, was it?
I've spoken to a number of legislatures, assemblymen, our local senator, and they're all saying the same thing, which is that neither the Democratic Party nor the Republican Party in any way, shape, or form supports any of those bills. There's one person who keeps putting it up, so it's present, but it gets killed immediately, and it's not going to move forward.
There was a lot of discussion about free or reduced lunch to all our students throughout the state, throughout the country. It makes perfect sense to me why we can't provide meals to our children. Period. It doesn't really, zip code shouldn't affect where and when you get meals to our kids. That's my opinion. Most of the legislators approved. There was one legislator who did not, for a very peculiar reason.
There's no free lunch.
And he said there's no free lunch, especially.
That was the one? Yeah.
And we said no free lunch, especially if you're driving Mercedes, they shouldn't be getting free lunch. It was like, and you heard a hush, of course, but it was a head scratch. Some questions about CTE programs. There's certainly some questions about the implementation of kind of electric buses. And that could be a real big problem, especially in rural areas upstate New York, as rather, it is a considerable cost. Those buses are not $100,000 to $300,000 to $400,000. So they're talking about renewable energy. it was, I think it was probably one of the most productive ones I've been for a long time, and Tommy went away and.
No, it was productive. I mean,
Any talk about teacher shortage, especially in certain
Areas.
you know?
No.
No.
there wasn't a question about that.
Yeah.
Yeah.
There was
You
some,
know what's frustrating about it is, you know, there's 11 questions that are asked.
Mhm.
And if you have 12 legislators there, each one wants to be able to say the same thing, you know, so it gets a little long, you know, I wish they'd change the format a little bit that, you know, maybe 4 legislators comment on a question.
there was also some really interesting discussion about polling places for elections.
Yeah.
Most of the school bills are being used, and there's some serious concern about the health and safety of our students during the time, specifically during primaries. I've known, and I've done some poll watching, and I've known from time to time, I've gone up to the high school, and the gym is being used. And those students are not having access to gymnasium, they're in the auditorium. I don't know how productive that is, and there's a lot of pushback from the Board of Elections to, you know, stay out of this, is not your business, so it is a concern. I think that this, we should have a right to decide where and when they can vote.
Or it should be moved out of the districts totally.
Yeah, and yeah,
But the downside is also this probably for a certain population, the only opportunity that they actually go into your schools. So it does give a connection.
Right, but
Yeah.
when you're doing that while school's in session,
exactly.
you're having, you know,
There
the
needs
public
to be,
mass come in.
You know, it's not 1950 anymore. There needs to be some progress.
interesting. Firehouses were spoken on, interesting. One district on the island actually uses their local Ford dealership
Oh, interesting.
for voting. I guess you pick up a Focus and vote, so. And I personally, I think it should be out of the district. It shouldn't affect our students.
Or, yeah, or at least when school's not in session.
Yeah, voting was the one session, which was
Yeah.
another topic of conversation. And our schools have to be closed for voting, and they should be in class, so. And another, I had the chance to also attend, I just lost my agenda.
Sorry.
National Public School.
National Public School was, last night. And Dr. Burgess gave a presentation along with, the executive director of, National Suffolk School Boards about fiscal responsibility of board members. I think we talked about it earlier. I applaud Dr. Burgess for his presentation. People were standing and applauding him the whole night from it, but he did an actually fantastic job. And the amount of thank yous we've gotten, the association has gotten as well as Sam gotten is really good.
I was going to say about that, one of the questions that last night was, can you retake your fiscal training? And you can.
Yes.
No, we just did it. Everybody else can.
You
retake
retook it?
No.
We just did it the first
Probably
time.
could
Well,
take it again.
I also want to.
You did it online. I was on White Plains.
I think we should raise a challenge if you didn't attend the presentation last night. Take the booklet home
Take the book.
and then you can quiz you next week.
Sure.
But if you were interested in retaking it, you have that opportunity.
I'll take half a booklet.
2, yeah.
Tomorrow starts our virtual conference for New York State School Boards Association. I don't know who's registered and who's not. I am registered. I'm gonna skip over the next one, which I think Mr. D'Angelo wants to speak to it. Number 7, last board meeting, we spoke about establishing a policy committee. We're gonna try to get this accomplished this evening, and
I would like that.
we're gonna see who's gonna show of hands who would like to be part of that committee. We did it years and years ago. but-
I was on the policy committee when
Yeah, I sat on it in Farmingdale when I was there.
Well, I mean, the reason we had the policy committee the last time was we reviewed all the policies.
Okay, don't get crazy.
Which is very exciting.
Very exciting.
And then, but now, you know, I think that was also because policies weren't updated that often, so there was quite a backlog of
Yeah.
old policies.
I think that, you know, NISBA tries to stay current and makes recommendations about policies that should be updated. But they also take a very statewide
Yeah.
global view, and
They're not.
just because they propose one doesn't mean it has.
It may affect
Yeah.
upstate New York,
Yeah,
downstate New York.
and then to try to like, one of the last ones that we've been looking at, like trying to work through the wills and the shalls and the mays, I think that is a discussion of what does it mean, what does the change mean, and why is it even in place? Is the job of a committee that could then present or recommend. Just think that work could be more fruitful and be more helpful.
Yes.
So we did pull, I think, a bunch of policies off our last book. We pulled them off the table. Should we establish the policy committee to look at those and put them back on?
Yeah, I don't think there was anything there that was earth shattering that needed to be done immediately, so I do think that
So,
it would like be the first charge
I
of.
think we have one volunteer.
Oh, I know, it's my stupid idea, I'll do it.
I didn't say that. We can have a motion.
Oh, I mean, it's okay.
I think that's two would be appropriate.
Yeah, two.
Anyone else?
Anyone else?
It's gonna be fun.
I see, well, I saw Kelly go like this. Anyone else?
No, we said three, we have a tiebreaker.
I saw that, be the third.
Okay, here you go. So.
All right, so Tom.
I don't know why I said
Guess what? You got.
And tomorrow we'll talk about which cabinet members gonna head that committee.
Yeah.
We have it right now.
I mean, I'll say my experience was, it was not only like board members, cabinet member, it was the union of members and probably a parent, at least one, should see what we're talking about and ask good
So,
questions.
It's a good, certainly cabinet people and as a community member.
Yeah, it's gonna be great. Come
I
on.
see a couple out there.
I said, we're showing hands on the community. We're out there right now.
Do wanna
Go through the
say
rules.
We've had a lot of good parent volunteers for the research study. I'm sure you have them in.
We don't need to do the resolution. I think we can just do it, right?
All right, game on.
I'll put an email out to the three of you, just setting up the date for the first meeting.
Thank you.
Okay, claims order report. Is that?
Yeah, there was really nothing out of the usual there. I mean. One thing I wanted to ask though, when is the next audit committee meeting? We have
Next
it
one,
on
I'm
the
looking to do it in April or May. We do actually have to have to put forward an RFP for external audit
okay,
because the way it was structured. Last time, if you remember, that Naraki Smith took over midstream.
Yeah.
So this is now the expiration of the year. So we do have to go out for RFP. So within the next month and a half, I'll be putting that together and looking to set an audit committee meeting prior to the board meeting.
One of the things we also talked about, and I just want to bring up again, the question of whether or not you want the audit committee to continue to be the Board of Ed.
well, we're gonna take it in reorg.
Okay.
So, because what we discussed at the last meeting was, we'll do that survey again. And if we feel that it needs to be improved, the structure, then we take it up in reorg. Very good.
Yeah, they actually brought up last night about the makeup of
The show of hands.
show of hands. How many had just school board members? How many had community members?
Was it mixed?
Oh, no, it was almost 100% just little school board.
Really?
No.
From what I saw.
I think when I asked the question, it was along the lines of how many are school board members on the audit committee, because when they said how many is it a hybrid?
So,
that
yes,
everybody
every
is
audit committee has school board, but how many are?
Well,
Mix
you
it up.
gave us,
Yeah,
you gave
solely,
stats
right.
on that, it was. Split. It
Yeah,
was-
the result.
Yeah, the result.
On that,
Right.
all board members.
I misspoke then. I'm sorry.
Well, from what you can see.
Well, yeah. It was on the left.
So
Item
I
number
had to
6.
step out a minute.
Paul
I
wanted
know
to
Dr.
speak.
Paris touched on it. So I'm gonna wear my school board member hat and my parent hat. I know this past weekend we hosted the annual debate tournament here in Sayville. And last year, my daughter Sophia entered the high school. She said she wanted to go out for debate team. Okay, what does it entail? And it sounds fun and follow your passion and go. And then, I found myself 2 months later, sitting on the couch at 11 o'clock on a Tuesday, talking about whether or not the Ukraine should be admitted to NATO. And, diving into these global topics and she just lit up and it definitely sparked something in her. Last year there were two students competing, but they got to interact with two seniors that were on the debate team that were stellar. So again, like it was unbelievable. And I wasn't able to attend this Saturday, but I was able to go last year and we're competing against schools from all over the island, Chaminade, Fort Washington, Syosset, Great Neck, Jericho. And we have this team now that's grown from 2 students to 10 students, but the teams that we're competing against have it as an elective, and this is an extracurricular, and our students are holding their own. So I just wanted to thank from the custodians to the building admin, student volunteers, teacher volunteers, just everyone involved, Ms. Walsh-Aarons and Ms. Bricker, Just, it's an unbelievable experience. I didn't get to go, my wife got to drop off some cookies and my daughter came home and she's like, the support was amazing. And, you know, the students were cheering for us and it was just, it's just an amazing thing. And this is probably long after my girls graduate, but I know, you know, with fencing, we had an interest and we were able to kind of capitalize on that. You know, if the numbers continue to go up, I would love to see us maybe have that elective, you know, so we can dedicate the time that the other schools that we're competing against have. But, you know, we just talk a lot about DEI and global citizenship and it truly, if you get a chance to stop in, and I know Mr. Hopper, you mentioned it in your statement. When I went in and sat in on one of the, and it was I think it was a JV one. I was like, it was like an episode of The West Wing on steroids. And you're just like, whoa. So again, just thank you to the community and thank you for everyone involved and, you know, hopefully we can capitalize on this.
Yeah, and I just want to again add compliment to the teachers and staff. They do a wonderful job with the kids. And one of the things we're going to be approving tonight is the new PR public relations person for the district. We've been out with that one for about a month, so we're really excited to have them come in and get more pictures, more articles, more things on the website, and really push out because our teachers are doing such great things with our kids, and we really want to get that out there to the community as much as we possibly.
And again, we have robotics,
Yeah.
we have Rise Tech, we have, I mean, we have
The
so
kids
many,
we
you know,
acknowledged tonight, right?
yeah, athletics, just so, there's so much going on and again, it's just, I'm just grateful to be here and that we have such dedicated staff on all levels.
Do
So,
we keep data on, you know, what kids are engaged in what? I mean, obviously, we spoke about 2.1 average, right? But like a single kid might be in 10 things, you know, and how do we identify who the kids who aren't engaged to make sure that we could scoop them in and get them into something?
But one of the things we did in our survey work was we asked them what they're involved in,
Mhm.
and we also broke down by, you know, male, female, race, you know, just to find out, are there any kids who feel less connected or more connected to our schools or have people they feel they can go to or not? And I think it was very helpful for us to get a picture.
Right. Well, those were anonymous though, right? So
Yes.
how do we figure out who those
Right.
kids
But
are?
we do have a list of like who's on each club and
Right,
activity and we can.
Maybe we can, when we actually package in terms of sharing the data for the
Yeah.
service, maybe we could include in that the number of students or the percentage of students that are involved in some sort of extracurricular as well as the percentage that are not.
Mhm.
You know, like when you, middle states, it's like schools don't really subscribe to it much, but it's an accreditation. One of the things that they use as a bellwether of kind of organizational health is how many kids are in an activity.
And the reason they asked that is because the research over the years has shown that when the kid's involved in a activity, it
Right.
doesn't have to be a sport or a debate club, it's just anything.
Right.
That they feel more connected to their school, then they engage more in the work.
I just even like when you're assessing like their mental health, you see a kid who was engaged up until like middle school, who drops off, kind of knowing, you know, who they are, like, we're tracking that in some way that isn't incredibly overwhelmingly a lot of work.
I mean, just to kind of, this is an important point, that's why I think I want to make another thought is, you know, for me, like in my job as a school administrator. The main thing I always say to parents is try to get your child involved in some part, some activity, whether it's theater, drama, athletics. Because that colors their perception about school. Like I can speak for myself as a student in high school. I didn't love high school. I really, but playing athletics, specifically football, completely altered my attitude towards school. I really did not love school the way I see my own children. And I see there's been a change, I think, in our student population. There's just a higher degree of academic engagement from our kids. But I want to know that. I want to know how many kids are not involved in activities. It's important.
There was one more item, it wasn't on the list that I have received, and I forwarded the email to everybody about a community member reached out to the board about us, asking us to possibly extend the public session from 3 minutes to 5 minutes, just as a topic,
Public comment.
as a comment, so. So now I think, for the opinion from anybody here, we're just gonna.
I think 3 minutes is appropriate.
yeah, it seems.
Unless we're
I
running
think,
to
I
the
think
issue.
we've been trying to be as accommodating as possible. I think if anyone does go above that, we try to be more reasonable. But
I think we should
if anything
continue
does
to-
open up, if they have a written statement, they would like us, the board, to review, certainly give it to us for further review.
So I was gonna say, I think we should continue to encourage the speakers, if they have further comments or want to extend the conversation, to definitely reach out to us, email, but Dr.
And if-
whoever.
if they have questions, I think it's best if the speakers finish their statement, we'll answer the questions instead of stopping.
Yeah.
That's right, to get the full.
Yeah.
Okay, with that being said, and that was public comment. Guys, you have to show of hands, how many people would like to speak tonight, please? Okay. All right, the Board of Education, I'm gonna read my statement. I normally read. The Board of Education and our administrators listen carefully to what members of our community have to say. We follow regulations specified by law and policy as we encouraging our community to offer public comment at the Board of Education. The Board of Education requests that anyone who participates in public sessions demonstrate civility as they address the board and community. Board of Education meetings are held in public view, giving the public the opportunity to watch and listen to the proceedings of the board. In these meetings, district staff updates the board on matters pertaining to school district. The board may be required to take actions on matters of district operation. Board Policy 1230 provides the opportunity for a period of public comment during this meeting. 30 minutes are usually set aside for comments and questions by the public before the board's agenda is moved. The board reserves the right to limit public participation in any case or given to the extent maximum comment period if decided is necessary. Questions or comment public limited to 3 minutes per person. Speakers are asked to identify themselves and or the group they represent. Speakers should conduct themselves in a civil manner and direct the comments to the board. The board will not permit discussion involving individual district personnel, students, or community members. Thank you. The first speaker would like to get up, please step up to the podium.
Your bodyguard.
Yeah, right. We wanted to take this moment to let you know how much we appreciate, welcome, and respect the new transparency of the district. We are happy to see that there are now open public discussions taking place at the Board of Ed meetings. We are thankful for all of the emails, social media posts which detail the achievements, successes, education, and the day-to-day classroom activities going on in all of our schools. Dr. Ferris's presence in our classrooms, buildings, and at many school events show a newfound dedication to the district on the superintendent level. Although I cannot speak for everyone in our community, I can speak for the many people that have been discussing this openly at local places in town, during school events, and at meetings. So thank you, Dr. Ferris, for bringing the transparency to the district. With that transparency, I would like to address specifically the email notification that was sent to the community regarding the circumstances surrounding the swastika in the middle school. For the first time in our years here, this is now out in the community directly from the administration, and we are glad it is being addressed. As a Jewish family of 4 children, we have been victims of anti-Semitism within the district since our oldest started kindergarten. She now holds her master's degree. We have been speaking loudly and boldly in the schools, with administration, and at the Board of Ed meetings. In the past, we have been met with little support, response, or correction from the district. This recent email was a clear, open public notification and a steadfast, bold response to the situation that occurred in the middle school. It tells us that the district is not going to ignore actions like this. We are glad to see that this is happening. When others saw the email, I started to receive text messages, social media posts, and inquiries from community members. And many of them were surprised at this information. Unfortunately, our family is not at all surprised. My children have endured things that should have never happened. We were outraged when our child was nicknamed a Jew, and it was used as often as you can imagine to the liking of a kid named Joseph being called Joe. We felt angry when we found out that our child, when with a group of students, had coins thrown down at the ground and was told for the Jew to pick it up. We were frightened when our child was called out by name on social media in a public exchange, and it was stated, "So-and-so is Jewish, kill the Jews." This is all at the hands of Sayville students. I ask you, how would you feel? We have seen and heard firsthand how teachers have singled out children and other Jewish students, asking them to raise their hands if they are Jewish. By labeling and numbering them, we as a district are giving space to those actions and making impressions on our young students that stick. This new transparency creates the opportunity to increase awareness, have better conversations, and to further educate the community and its members. By shedding light on these situations, we create the opportunity for those not having the discussions to have them. This opens the door for us to find new solutions to address the deep hate and infiltrated conscious and unconscious bias that we know exists. This new transparency placed demands on our community members, school administration, teachers, and students, holding them accountable for their actions, which is something has long overlooked. To move forward as a community, we must drive out the hate that lives within our community. We need to equip the students to be better and to be the best version of themselves. We need to teach them hate directed towards the Jewish population or any other minority is unfounded. This is one of the jobs of education. It is part of our core values as stated on the Sayville Schools website. Acknowledging it exists is the first step of many on a very steep and tall flight of stairs. We need and must do better, and we need to do better now in order for our future to be better. Thank you.
for your comment. Thank you. Anyone else, please?
So we're gonna get to see the results of the student survey.
Again, anyone else, we please step up podium if you want
It's hard.
to. Is that gonna speak for 3 minutes?
Yes, no,
Okay, yeah.
2 seconds, that's
Yeah,
it. I was just wondering if we're gonna see the results of the students, yeah. All right.
Anyone else, please? Okay,
I'm sorry, I also have a question. In regards to, last week with the, MLK guest speaker at the middle school, I'm just wondering who approves that guest speaker
Okay, so,
to be part of
Sure.
that presentation.
okay, so I'm gonna speak to just each of the comments in order. Anyone else want to speak, and then I'll answer all those questions? Okay, so thank you, Mrs. Minutella, for your comments. I can only imagine how hard it's been for you and your family to go through the things that you've described. And I want you to know that the district is committed to making sure that all students are treated with equity and supported throughout our district. In terms of the student surveys, they're being analyzed by our parent committees. We have a parent and staff committees that are kind of going through the data. We're creating charts and graphs to kind of illustrate the findings. If you just look at the raw data, it's hard to look at. So, and that's going to be presented to the board sometime in the spring. Once that's presented, the full results will be published on our website for any parent who wants to look at the survey results, the focus group results, the outcomes, can access all of those and break them down by category, grade level, age group, whatever.
It's the same data that was presented tonight, right?
Yeah, well, I just want to add, I mean, we discussed this at a prior meeting, we didn't want to wait until the formal 100-day survey is done and miss a whole budget cycle.
Gotcha.
So what Dr. Ferris has been doing is basically,
As you get.
taking
yeah,
information from it, but it's not really.
Right, so we took the finance question, and that's the chart you saw. There's
Yeah.
one question on if finances are tight, but if we were spending money, what would you want it to spend it on? Those were the results from that particular question. There's a whole host of other questions
Right.
about kids feeling safe in school, kids feeling supported academically. All kinds of questions
Yeah.
that'll be broken down by categories and then presented to the board. But we have the data and different parts of it have been shared at different times. But we're going to have one presentation where it's given to everybody.
Appreciate it.
In terms of the Martin Luther King breakfast, I think there's a little bit of confusion about that. So that's an event that's hosted by a university, I believe it was Massachusetts and UMass, and it was a Zoom event that was happening. So we've been a part of that for the last 5 years, and there are different speakers within that. So we have always signed up for that event. As a club, there was like 14 students in the club. The club advisor had signed up for it each year. And upon learning the particular background of the speaker 2 days beforehand, the principal, the club advisor, I believe it was it was Jillian Mattress, got together, looked at the speaker, looked at the background, and decided that that wasn't really the speaker we wanted to support. So a decision was made. I know social media blew up about it even before that, but before that even happened, we were looking at the event and saying this is not probably, even though she was presenting probably very differently for that event than she was on her social media pages, we felt it just wasn't something we wanted to expose the children to. So there was a process where that was looked at. This is an event that we participated in the past that had not had such issues. But once we realized it was an issue, we decided to skip it and move on to a different activity. The principal met with the Unity Club and the advisor talked about the fact that we support them, but that this particular person was not someone we wanted to support as a school, and they're going to find something else to focus on. So I think it was kind of made into a bigger issue, as if nobody's checking and we were having this big school-wide event. It just wasn't the case. And as soon as the principal and the advisor and the assistant superintendent got together, they looked at the person. And even after we were talking about removing it, social media exploded saying things like, the entire middle school is having an assembly with the speakers coming to the school. They were never contracted. We didn't pay for anything. It's more of a, like, you get an invitation to join a Martin Luther King breakfast. It's the one we've been doing for 4 years. So it seemed like something that would be a typical Martin Luther King message, which is we believe that all people should be equal under the eyes of the law. And that's kind of Martin Luther King's message. And when we realized it wasn't in the background of the speaker, we didn't participate. But it's not something we were bringing to the school to do. It was a Zoom meeting that kids were planning to attend, but we decided not.
And Dr. Paris, was, because again, I read some of the letters and responses. This was, in order to go to this, these were club members whose parents signed permission slips.
Yeah, that there's a flyer that the organization puts out about what the breakfast is
Yeah.
about. And it's about equity and inclusivity and, you know, what you would say is basic things that we support. And that club was planning to attend, and the supervisor put out the permission slips and got permission from the families. The agenda was there, the people speaking. It wasn't just about that one person. There were other people involved in the event. But again, when the principal and Ms. Macris and the advisor looked at it about 3 days beforehand, started to say this might not be the thing for us. As that was happening, simultaneously, Facebook was blowing up with a lot of versions of what was happening, and they decided not to have the event. So that's it.
Wouldn't something like that though be researched before you agree to have, I mean, I understand the breakfast, you do it every year, I know that. But somebody of that nature, that controversial, wouldn't you do a little research on who that person is before you agree to something like that?
Right, first of all, there was no agreements made. It's kind of like you get an invitation and you can attend, like, there's no, we didn't contract with this person to come to our schools and then find out that they were, you know, had a background that we didn't approve of. It's an event that we've been participating in for 4 or 5 years.
Right.
That has been a pretty straightforward event. Even what the woman was going to speak on probably was straightforward and aligned with what the message of that day was. In order to kind of find out more about that person, you'd have to go on their Facebook page, look at some of their posts. And when we did that, we said, that's not really the kind of person we want to project our kids to. So we didn't. But the event itself and what had been the past experiences with that event had been pretty typical events that would not raise a red flag. I do want to commend the principal, the advisor, and the assistant superintendent, Jillian, because they did recognize it and they did make a change.
Any other questions?
Yeah.
Motion to that, back in recess.
Second.
Second. We're back at 9:30, 9:25, 28.
Oh.